our speaker today is one of my favorite sweet men. He is so wise, and every time I am around him, I get little tidbits of wisdom because he's had a lifetime of experiences, right? And he's just 80-ish young, and he's used all those times to gather wisdom, education, trials and errors. And he's been a ship captain for many years. He knows the Southeast Passage like the back of his hand. He has this amazing island retreat that he goes to that's his paradise. And when he asked me if he said he had some words of wisdom that he wanted to share with us, and I said, let's get you on the schedule. So please give, I love the title of his talk, A Lifetime Experiences to Become a Qualified Apprentice of He's Not Sure Yet. So please give Jan Sande a big pat of welcome.
All right. You didn't get a hug yet.
I know. I was petting your jacket, though. It's beautiful.
All right. First thing is, I have to remind everybody that I had some strokes here 2 years ago. So my cognitive stuff is not quite like it used to be, but that's all okay. And sometimes I just, oops, what am I going to do now? Sort of a thing. So you're going to have a problem, and I'm going to have a problem, and it's just going to flow perfectly, right?
Right.
All right. That being said, the next thing is I had a lucid dream just a few days ago. And it was very interesting to me because it pretty much explains where we are today. And some of this, as I did a lot of reading many, many years ago, it goes back to the time when the Great Pyramid was created. And I'll have these things out here too. But anyway, there was an astrologer on a talk show within the last few days too, and he kind of explains things a little bit better. But anyway, getting to the dream, and I have to have a lot of water in my throat because something with the operation that was going on, don't know what it was, anesthesia or whatever, my throat is always dry. What life is. All right. So, what I see is 3 planets are aligned with the Great Pyramid. I don't know which ones they were, but there were 3. And they were lined up at the moment from the constellation Orion. And then the pyramid was created over decades. But anyway, with the constellation and everything lined up, 3 planets. All right, the dream takes place today. So I'm running around kind of in a country like Southern California. There's deserty land. But I have a very high speedboat. So I run north until I run out of gas. Okay? The landscape is changing. But I stopped because I'm out of gas and I get into a helicopter. So, and this took place all night. It was about 4 hours long. So I'll get in the helicopter and continue on north until the helicopter runs out of gas. Like that, this must be an important place where I'm going. And that runs out of gas, so I start walking. Well, this part of the country now is getting to be a little bit populated. So, and I'm wandering, I run into some, it was kind of like Well, up here, with birch trees and things like that. Ran into some houses that were being built, but they're all small. I mean, they're not really small, but they're, well, I don't know, 1,000 square feet, things like this, not too big. Ran into some kids, and they're preteens. I asked them, they says, I gotta go to this place. I said, oh, you gotta go here. Well, the road is going like this. And it's just taking forever because I'm walking. And then I finally run into a couple of old timers. And I tell them where I want to go. It's some kind of a crystal village or something like this. Oh, we know where that is. It says you take that road and it says you'll be there in 25 miles. Don't go on this other one because you'll just keep on walking on. Well, I get to this crystal city. Well, apparently then, listening to this astrologer, he put all the pieces together. And it's what is happening today versus what was happening when the pyramid was created, is the dark energy came to our planet in the building of the pyramid, according to the astrologer. Okay, what is happening today, because we're not in the same place as we were back then, is all of the information that he was referring to, and strictly information coming from astrology, none of his own opinions, is that because of the 3 planets that were there at that particular time, and apparently they are there at this particular time, that the energy has shifted from the dark to the light. So the lucid dream was, all of this information is coming now will be slow and gradual over however long it takes us to get through all of this. Generations probably in order to get through it. But there will be no more World War type things like we've gone through history for thousands and thousands of years. It won't be. It will be peaceful. Sure, there's going to be uprisings and things like this from time to time. We just can't get away from all of it. But generally speaking, it's all going to be flowing in a peaceful manner. Now I need another drink of water. So those are the good news. Now, here's another little bit of good news. Louis and I, well, I'll hand these out first. This is supposed to be. They use this all the time. This one. Louis and I came back from Phoenix in 19. And we stopped at Hopi Land and got a tour out into the petroglyphs. On the back side of this, you'll notice a couple of scribbles that I put on there. One is with the astrologer and the other is with the finishing part of this diagram. So on the diagram, talking with the lady, her name is Evelyn Fredericks, and her uncle took her aside and explained all of the native ways to the niece, Evelyn. And the Hopi claim they came from Lemuria. So their oral traditions, her uncle, White Bear Frederick, Oswald White Bear Fredericks, was co-author of the Book of the Hopi as well as other book that he wrote. So he's pretty well informed, one of the keepers of the wisdom. So she explained all of this business of coming from Lemuria from a long, long time ago. But on this diagram, the people are moving gradually uphill. And then there's a Y in this diagram, and one goes down, and the other continues gradually up. Okay, we're at times right now, are we going to get into the 5th dimension or not? Well, back in 19, when Evelyn and I were talking about all of this, she asked me, from your experience, are we there yet? And I says, I don't know. And she says, I don't know either. Well, there's a lady that was about 70 years old at the time. And anyway, so we left with that, we don't know. Well, that was just a few years ago, I think. Well, what you'll see on there was the one, the Hopi had a vision in 1972. And, you know, Don has seen that one. But they, in turn, back in 72, recorded it because their wisdom people keep track of everything. So I'll let you people go, but anyway, it's verification of this is where we are today from what Evelyn and I didn't know in 19. Linda and I went back the same way, and we did talk with Evelyn. We talked to her sister and went out to see the Pedregosa again. And because Evelyn had passed. And anyway, as we're finishing up our little discussion and stuff, we're going back to where we're staying. I asked Evelyn if we were here into the next dimension or getting into the, and she just said, oh, absolutely, the wisdom people said we're here. And then with that little video, it verifies the fact that yes, we are here. So, and then with the astrologer and everything explaining this as well, we are here. And so that covers that particular part. And here is a book that I think is very important to me. Ismael Perez talks about all of the changes in the universe as well, and where we are today. And he claims that he's getting information from the Akashic records, the Biru, as well as information coming from underneath the paw of the Sphinx. He didn't say how he was getting this information. Did he actually go to, you know, the Akashic records, or was this being brought to him or in Biru? Or it was just coming down and through voice or whatever? He didn't say. But anyway, I told Louis that he could have it read this doggone book afterwards. But anyway, I'll get it back.
What's the name of the book?
Show us the book.
I'll pass it
Show
around.
us the book.
It's
So we
called-
can see the cover.
It's called Our Cosmic Origin by Ismael Perez.
His name's on the back of this.
Yes, and the name of the book is on the back of this as well. I'll just quickly pass this around so people can take a quick look at it.
So anyway, from everything that I have read over so many, many years, we are definitely in the beginnings of the new dimension. So, what do we do next? This is too much to read here, but that's basically that's all I covered. Anyway, I do get to the Crystal City, whatever that means. You know, I'm sure we'll find out. But it's only 25 miles away now. All right. The next thing on my list is more water. The drum. Now that's the drum. There's a long story to that, but I won't explain it all. But that is a peregrine falcon. And that's me. That's who I am. And peregrine has a separate meaning in the dictionary of one who wanders. So that's what I do with shamanic learning, as well as others. And of course, that's the Southwest. So the reason that I got that picture to paint that goes back to a lady that I met when I was doing a workshop in the Seattle area. And she had come from Southern California. And on a particular day, which I will talk about that later, she went into an art gallery and she bought 2 pictures. They're just big. In fact, there's a picture of the birds in the house. If you can remember what they were on the wall by the fireplace. Okay, one of them was a peregrine falcon sitting on a crystal ball. And the other was the falcon sitting on 3 chicks. The chicks were already born. So she carried these gosh darn things around from place to place, not knowing who they were for or where they were supposed to be. For probably 20 years. And we're sitting there talking about these things and what was happening, and she quickly ran up and I asked her husband, I says, what the heck's she doing? She said, I'm gonna go get those pictures. I says, what pictures? Well, she showed them to me. Anyway, for me then, it was important to have those pictures because all of a sudden after 20 years, she knew where they were supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's the drum. And then the soul group, my soul group. Okay, already did that. Anyway, I'll tell this now because it's on my card. But
That's okay, good reason.
one of the things that I did was through hypnosis, I went to my soul group. Quite interesting. Very interesting. You know, we read so much, and then all of a sudden we go through hypnosis, and it all fits together. Well, in my life, there was my mom. This is because of the soul group. I identify these people. My mom, my dad, my grandpa, my 2 sons, and I guess that was about it. Anyway, and I thought, wow. So seeing my life, now this takes place when I was in my 40s, late 40s. Yeah. Okay. All this other stuff finally fits together on the behavior pattern of, say, starting with my grandparents and my mom and my dad and, also with my sons. It all made sense because the soul group family is a family and we come to teach somebody in a group a specific thing. All right. And that specific thing will come later. Okay. We're still in the era of the 2000s. We're not going back to when I was born, because that's something else. I took a workshop in Germany. It was a week. And our purpose was to learn how to purify our planet for a week. And it was drumming. It was the teacher was a master shaman. So we go through all of that, and we purified water. And we did it on several different things, just like drumming and concentration through our brain. The brain that's up there. And so several times we even had a small pool of water, and we would, test it afterwards, and yeah, it was perfect. So, but part of this whole thing is, of course, we had to do a skit, I happen to be in a water group, so there's an earth group and a fire group and so forth. We had to do this. So, anyway, now's the time to bring out this word. Okay. Anybody here speaks German? I want to know if the German word for and pump are in fact usable in the English language. So what the humpback whale does when they breach is they go, and when they land in the water, they go, "Oomph." Well, what is happening when we did it in our group? Now, there are 80 people in this group. When you go, that is breathing out the love that comes from humpback whale. And it goes, whoop, that's spreading it around the world. Well, it worked. Worked over there in Germany. So it's going to work here as well. And the last thing that we did of that particular group, which was kind of interesting because we're kind of in the same place today. Now that was in 2007 when I was at that workshop. The last question was, and of course we drummed and meditated. All 80 people came up with the same answer, and the question was, what is the medical, profession, I guess would be a good word to use, going to be like in 100 years? Well, everybody came up with the same answer, is that it will be through modalities of energy, sound, so forth. And what we know as the medical profession today will transform itself into all of this that we're getting into now. Little bit by little bit, practitioners are coming along using sound, vibration, and color, and so forth. This is it. So let's just stick around until 2100 shows up, and we'll know if it's true. We should be able to do that. All right. Well, I agree, because more and more we see other practitioners coming along that are, coming, filling in the places, and even speaking with some of the practitioners in hospital, and Lynn and I have been coming and going from these places for a few years, So yeah, some of the practitioners are starting to lean in this direction. And it's good. It's all, everything is good. Okay. Now back to the nitty gritty. So we're coming from the love aspect, and we're going back to how I reached this particular point, and of course some of us will feel it. Okay. I'm not going to start with mom. I'm going to grandma. And grandma on both sides of the family. And if I knew enough history, I could even go back to the greats, probably, which would be, getting back into the early 1800s. But, the late 1800s is fine and dandy. But, so that's where I'm going to start. And some of this I also got from, what's the word? Not regression. A rebirthing experience, is that what it's called?
Mhm.
Okay, I also did that through hypnosis. Okay, I'll start with Grandpa Sande on my side. He was a merchant in Ketchikan and sold clothing for the outdoor guy, the loggers, the fishermen, these kind of people. Okay, he was a Mason and a member of the KKK. Grandma was a sweetheart. Grandma Sande was truly a sweetheart. She really was. But I'll just say that Grandpa was kind of a jerk. I'll stop. That covers lots of bases. All right. Then I'll go to Grandpa Malmeen. Now, Grandpa Malmeen came from Norway, and he had promised his mother that he would become a pastor, which he did, a Lutheran pastor. And his wife, well, I never met, but from listening to him talk, that she had a real control problem of sorts, and was really, I'll use the same word again, a jerk. Well, Grandpa's first assignment was in 1918 in a place west of here, Mary's Igloo, which no longer exists. And so much of the village was lost because of the flu in 1918. Tremendous loss. So, and the other place that was close by where his partner was living was Bremen Mission, and I guess Bremen Mission was still a village. Anyway, so here we have the contrast between two different grandpas. And the Grandpa Malmeen then did move down to the southern end of Burnoff Island where Sitka is, and then to Ketchikan, and created the Lutheran Church in Ketchikan. So, anyway, my mother's mother was this person I'll call a jerk. And she grew up that way. And there were tremendous problems in that family afterwards. But anyway, an issue came with her. You know, mom and dad were married. And I was born 2 months premature in 1939. Well, Mom was extremely angry because of the pregnancy. She was going to the university and of course had to quit that business. And her weight nearly doubled. Now here's this tiny little thing that's shorter than me. And all of a sudden, probably weighed 95 pounds, and then all of a sudden it's almost double. I can't even imagine what the physical body was going through at that particular thing. It must have been horrible for her. Anyway, so much anger. So, of course, I was born with a lot of anger. And 2 months early. And in those years, I was put into an incubator. Well, what did I bond with? A bright light to keep me warm. And even to this day, I don't like bright lights. So I was born with it. So anyway, a little bit further on in the story of some of which I had seen because of the rebirthing business. My parents were divorced when I was about a year and a half old, and I went with my dad. Well, World War II was just getting ready to full blast, and you know, what was it? December 7th, 1941 was when the Pearl Harbor, and my dad was a merchant mariner, and his work was mostly out in the Aleutian Islands, getting ready to build the Navy bases out in Mayak and Kodiak and as well as Dutch Harbor. So I didn't see him much. So I bounced around from Auntie to Grandma and back to Auntie and some other friends, stuff like this until the war was over. And then my mom and dad my dad remarried another woman. So then I had some normalcy in my life. But growing up then with all of this anger and all of the stuff that was predisposed upon me, I consider my actual childhood pretty normal. You know, as much as I get into mischief and things as we do. But there was an issue that came about for so many different times. And in fact, this happened at one time when I was probably just a year and a half old, when my dad's ship was in Ketchikan. I fell off the ship. and he had a diamond to get me out. So the reasoning for all of this came later on with some of the other studies that I was doing, that I didn't want to be here on this planet. I did not want to be here. Period. So a simple method would be to drown. Well, I never did. And the people are always pulling me out, like my cousin pulled me out in Ketchikan 2 or 3 different times. And so then comes, yeah, I got that taken care of. World War II. That's taken care of. Well, we get into the 8th grade. So, considering everything was sort of normal up until that time, no, 2nd grade, I've got to tell this story. In 2nd grade, I fell out of a tree. Of course, I'm light, I'm monkey-like, and I'm playing. Anyway, I fell out of a tree, got a concussion. The rest of the summer, I remember just laying on the sofa. Well, it messed up my back. Pretty bad, though I didn't know it at the time. Anyway, 8th grade, I'm leaving for high school. And don't know what the troubles were. I figured I was normal, but heck isn't, you know. 2 of my teachers, an English teacher and a math teacher, recommended that when I get into high school to take the easiest classes I can get, just to simply graduate. What does this mean? Apparently they figure I'm not worth much in the way of brain power to get into the university, but they didn't say much. So the words I just used, not their words, but my words, is that basically I was stupid. Those are my words only, not theirs. So I get into high school, and I take algebra, and of course English. And I didn't do well in English, but I got by. And the learning behavior of me is when it comes to math, for example, I have to do problem after problem after problem and more problem. So I would do that, but my daily work was just, crashed. But came time for the test, I got an A on the test. And I've done that all my life. While the teacher, and I was sitting next to a classmate who, did great work on her homework, but I did her test for her. She got an A, I got a D. Anyway, I learned it, she probably didn't. But anyway, so we're through high school, and I read 2 books in high school. One was the story of Edgar Casey's life. Here I am, probably 17 years old, reading this story about Edgar Casey's life. Now, in Ketchikan, for example, back in those years, in the 50s, if you weren't a Lutheran or a Catholic or some other denomination, you don't fit here. I'm sure there's so many of us understand that concept. Well, here I am reading this book about Edgar Casey. What the heck is all this about? I still have that book today. I have no idea its source, none whatsoever. So a second book was given to me, and I think I might have read that in high school, in the school library. Was Son of the Smoky Sea. It's about a story of a native that lived out in the Aleutians, maybe Dutch Harbor or on Alaska at the time, maybe from Adak, I'm not sure where, or if he even said. But I knew that I had to get to the Aleutian Islands someday. Well, it just so happened that 4 days after graduation, there was a United States Coast and Geodetic Survey ship in town, as a couple of the crew had left. and they needed a couple crew. And they were heading for the Bering Sea. And I had to go. So I got the necessary paperwork from the police station and signed on board and off. We head for the Bering Sea. And there's lots of other stories involved with that as well. But I thoroughly enjoyed the stormy, windy, ugly weather that comes from the Bering Sea. Like you wouldn't be. Of course, it's summertime. You know, it's April. No, it isn't April. It's June, 1st of June. And apparently, in one of my past lives, I probably was living out there because it was just like home to me. All right. So I signed on, and I stayed there for 6 years with the Coast VA survey. And I was promoted a little bit more rapidly than I probably should have, because it was actually part of the Navy. So I moved from the sailor business up to being a petty officer, and when I left, I was a chief petty officer. And but through hard work, I worked probably 14 hours a day. I'm learning the new job I had and what I was supposed to be doing, and pulled it all off. And and then I also went to maritime school as well, and merchant mariner's license. And then it came, the only part of the whole thing that I didn't like about the post-VA survey is I spent 5 months out of the winter in Seattle. I'm not a Seattle person. And the work on the ships and the surveying and all this stuff, it was just great for me. So anyway, so then the next opportunity came to go to work for the Alaska Marine Highway System, and I died, and my dad came out and got me because we were surveying around Ketchikan, and off I went. I said, wow, this is a big ship. I'm not used to these big things. Anyway, so I worked there for 35 years. And again, all this stuff. What's next on the list? We're running out of time already. Don't need that. I don't know how that went back. Oh, when I was 20 years old, this is an interesting part of all this story. When I was 20 years old, again, I was still in Seattle on the Coast VA survey. I was taking flying lessons. Well, I had 40 hours in the air already, and I was just about ready to start ground school. And the plane, something happened in my brain, whatever. Anyway, my final approach, and nothing was there. I was not there. The plane landed on the water, and oh, we're here. I taxied over and put the plane away. 3 different times this happened, and when I got back to the ship, I didn't understand what was going on at all. There was a blacked out period for probably not more than 2 minutes, probably like a minute and a half. Went over to my ship and crashed, and I hit my head, and they rushed me up to the hospital. Hospital couldn't find nothing out, and they finally decided that there was something wrong with my back. Well, I started therapy. I mean, years and years and years of therapy with my back, but they never did figure out what was wrong with, why that happened. But anyway, that was my first encounter with the angels. And 3 times in a row, that's amazing. So anyway, what do we go to? Navigate school. Don't need that anymore either. So what came next? I got married. Yeah, that was in the late 60s. whatever. I got married when I was 27 years old. And party times, Alaska's party time. And Trevor was born, and about that very same time, I decided that I had done enough party life, and I didn't want any more of that, so I quit. Well, the wife didn't. She liked her booze. And anyway, then Sean came along 5 years later, and of course, we were raising the family. But when I was 35 years old, a purser on the ship gave me a book to read, and it was Shirley MacLaine's book, Out on a Limb. And that brought me back to Edgar Casey's book. And I think, what in the world is going on with this business? Really, I read that book and read it and everything else. Well, I was on the Seattle run at that time as pilot, and I go across the street 2 or 3 blocks away, whatever it was, the bookstore, and I come back with armloads of books. In that 10-year period, from 35 to 45, I probably read 200 or 300 books. So I finally decided that I need to do something practical, because all these authors are saying the same thing. So I had to reach out. Well, I had an opportunity to go to Juneau to do a 3-day workshop, because one of the crew was a psychic. And I did that. I thought, holy moly, that even opened me up even more. And then the harmonic convergence comes along. Well, Louis and I were both sitting on different mountaintops, and the guy who was my chief mate, we climbed up the mountain in Skagway. And I hollered at him and I says, "Do you feel some energy flowing in here?" He says, "Yeah, I sure do." And he says, "Is it good or bad?" And he said, "Oh, it's good." I thought, oh my gosh, okay. We ran with that. We had to rush back to get on the ship and head back. Well, I was taking a lot of regression work to a hypnotherapist in Seattle at that time. So I mentioned it to her, and she explained to me that, yeah, there was a harmonic convergence, and this was the beginning of our energy shift. And she, yes.
So quick question. When you were on the mountaintop during the harmonic conversions, was that on purpose, or that just was a coincidence that your soul had organized?
It was a coincidence, and that's where I was
Very
told that both of us were told.
Okay, cool.
The chief mate was also a very spiritual guy, though
Very
at the
cool.
time we didn't know it. Neither one of us did.
Thanks.
Yeah. So anyway, that starts that. And so anyway, the past life regression work went on for an entire year. So basically 26 different sessions from that entire year. Then after that, I was raised in grade to a captain and had my own ship. So I had to give up that business for a while, because I didn't have the opportunity in Seattle to do any more of that kind of work. But then, we'll leap into 1994. On November 2nd, 1994, of course, I'm becoming more sensitive all the time. On November 2nd, 1994, my son Sean left his physical self up in Hatcher Pass under a pile of snow. So, it means that I was becoming more sensitive. I would get this feeling here, and it always had to do with something with the ship wasn't right, and I, find out what was going on. And this particular time, it was intense, absolutely, totally intense, and I couldn't find a problem until wee hours of the morning when my ex-wife, I got a divorce, so my ex-wife said, "Sean's missing on the mountain." So we come up here to Anchorage, and we head up to Hatcher Pass and stuff. So my psychic ability found out where he was. Are we running out of time? Oh,
15.
okay, just keep going. And two others, and I had Trevor, talk to them. We came up with exactly the same spot where he was. Okay, now we're getting to the point where he wasn't found until summertime when the snow was low. But I asked the helicopter pilot, who was the state trooper, to fly a direct line from point A to point B. And I said, stop. And I looked at my watch, it was 4:21. And that was the time it was 3 days prior to it was 4:21 in the afternoon. So anyway, that's 4:21 in the afternoon on 3 days after the second is when he left his body behind and went home. And at that particular moment, this was a feeling that I had never had in my entire life. Ever. I had no idea how this could be, what the meaning of, or the feeling of love could be, because I wanted a light bulb in an incubator. So I'm in the helicopter, and I told the pilot, I says, you'll find him directly underneath us. Well, annoying to me, that the trooper sergeant, not the pilot, but the trooper sergeant that was there, started to cry. I think he felt the same energy. My heart, it was like blowing up a balloon. You can feel just the tension wise when you're blowing up a balloon. That's what my heart felt like, and it was just absolutely, truly amazing to understand what love actually was. Well, going back now to the soul group people, all of these people that were in my soul group were on stage. For me, because I was a lesser person in the soul group that had to understand this feeling in that manner of losing the son in order to do it. It's all part of the soul group. So yeah, and it took me some time. Anyway, after that then, I went into a sweat lodge, in and out of the sweat lodge in Ketchikan for 3 days. And part of it was the pictures that came from the lady that had been to California of the Peregrine Falcon. That was part of it. Another part was that the information that was going to come, because there was this big sarcophagus-like thing there, and it says, it's not time for you to know this information now. And it cracked open up. It's like, no, you can't look in there and see. This is information from the Akashic records, probably, that's going to come. Well, now, these things are fulfilling themselves because we're getting this information from that book, and astrologers and everybody that's coming forth with this. So anyway, after that then, I headed for Seattle area, or the Kitsap Peninsula, to visit with friends because I needed some healing. And she comes home with the flyers, and I said, oh, that lady, I gotta see her. Well, I took a 5-day workshop from her, and then 2 years after that, because Sean was there with her and the group. And she said, you gotta stay. And I said, I know that, but I financially can't do it right now. So I signed up the following year, and it took a 2-year Barbra Brennan hands-on class. And that is heavy duty. I mean, truly heavy duty for the first year. I mean, oh my gosh. I could talk on and on. But anyway, for the 2 years, Sean was there. And other people, probably at least 60% of that class group of about 20 people. He was there helping each individual. And one lady was a massage therapist, and she says, hey, he's here every day with me. So he was fulfilling his part as well as that. So anyway, I finished with that particular program, and after 2 years. And then one of the assistant teachers of the group had done some work with Sande, and I had a weekend workshop with her, and then I took 2 more weekend workshops with Sande work, and then I went on to do a 2-week shamanic healing workshop. And that was also an organ. And I'm telling you, I thought I had finished enough of this stuff with the Barbra Brennan work. And boy, was I in for a recall of life. Wow. It really was. It was just absolutely amazing. But, there's another part. Anyway, I quit drinking when I was, 30-ish, 32 or whatever year it was. And Sean and Trevor, and the wife at the time, we were going boating on my 34-foot boat. Well, it just started, wouldn't work. So anyway, they went home. I am tearing apart the starter and get it all up. And on my way home, I ran into, I was a captain by now, a fellow captain who had brought his own boat up. And he hollered at me. Well, I had a couple of drinks on an empty stomach and working hard and stuff like this. So I was a little bit woozy. And I got home, and the wife just raised all kinds of hell with me. I ended up in vacation for 30 days. It was probably the most wonderful vacation I ever had at a treatment center. And it was great. It was the first time in my whole life that I had 30 days of peace. And at night I had a tiny little flashlight, and at night I read all the notes and all this kind of stuff. So truly it was a vacation for me. And anyway, we were divorced. We weren't divorced at that time. No, we're getting close to it though. Anyway, so I was bound and determined that I was going to stay because my boys needed a father. So that was in 1990. And of course, I got a divorce after that. And my boys, Sean went to heaven, and Trevor was busy doing what he was doing. But yeah, that was a wonderful moment for me. It really was. There's a tremendously small group of people that graduate from a treatment center and are healed. It's like 2 or 3% or 5% or something. All the rest go back to drinking. Well, I went in sober, came out sober, been sober since, haven't had a drink. Okay, don't need that anymore. Well, don't need that anymore either. Notice that about that. Nope, did that already. My goodness, I've covered the most of it. Well, anyway, so getting to the point here, I better quit. I found what love is, and soul group and so forth, and all of the past life stuff and everything is fitting into place. And I took that, so basically, here I am, and I feel I'm an apprentice of life. That's what I am. Even though I've done a tremendous amount of soul work with shamanic healing and stuff like this, and I do soul rituals and other such things, I'm not a master of, and neither was all the shifts, even though that was a title. No, I'm still just, I'm an apprentice of life. That's it.
I was fascinated.
Lost your question?
I was fascinated when you opened and started talking about your dream, about the connections between the pyramids. So I was just hoping you would elaborate a little bit more on your dream. Do you remember seeing anything about the tunnels and the space stations that are under the Sphinx?
You mean the,
With the pyramid and the stars.
no.
You didn't.
That's what, actually, it's what I saw was just the fact that it was built with the dark energy because that was here for thousands of years. And then now, with three planets coming back, is that the energy is turning positive for the whole world, and we're moving slowly and gently into this kind of approaching total peace in our planet. Yeah.
Do you think that when you landed or blacked out, those 3 times that the angels were landing your plane? Do you think that's why you blacked out?
It was because of my back. But the angels, that was my first introduction to the angels. Yeah. When I was 20 years old, not knowing it, but yeah. Yes.
Hey, do you think the Anunnaki built the pyramids?
We didn't do it. It probably was the Anunnaki. I'm sure it was.
They
Yeah.
were involved.
Yeah.
But also the practice.
Any other questions?
I got one.
Yes.
You know, you said that mentioned something about your experience with the angels in the middle of your talk, and then you just kind of went by that. And I wanted to hear more about it. I was wondering if anybody else did.
The angels are with me all the time. There was one other one that came about, but I can't remember what it was exactly right now. It's kind of this, this brain fog thing, but the angels are always with me. In fact, if I use the left brain and try to fix something, it doesn't work. I have to get information from the angels. It's just like being here. For probably 2.5 or 3 weeks, the angels are talking to me, telling me I have to speak. Otherwise, I would never have done this. You know? Because I've learned over all of the years that if I say, okay, for my ego purposes, I have to get up and talk, I blow it. Whatever it would be, if it was taking a trip and going to Mexico, if the angels didn't tell me to go to Mexico, I wouldn't go.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And the same thing with, okay, another time was when Louie and I went to Hopi Land, I was told prior to that I had to find a Hopi elder male and a Hopi elder female. And that's why we went, because I was told otherwise. Well, we stayed in the hotel and gone out. But there was a purpose for that. And there was another time was I took a ship down to Lake Union Shipyard, and I was told that I had to find out what auras were all about. And that was in probably about 1989 or something like that. So yeah, and things like this. And as far as my work as being a navigator, if I felt something was going wrong somehow, I rushed to the bridge. And sure enough, I was there soon enough to prevent an accident, a collision or drowning or something like this.
Mhm.
So that has been part of my life for probably, well, starting in when I was 20 years old, I was flying an airplane.
Sure.
They did it, but they didn't actually contact me other than did it themselves.
Mhm.
So yeah. it's been
Sounds
part
like
of my
they
life.
talked to you through your inner voice that you listened.
Yeah, and Sean, he's part of the 2-year group. He was there helping everybody, and he helped me, and I listened to him. Oh gosh, the last time it was probably maybe only 8 years ago, and he's been going now since '94. So it's something that I really have to know. He comes a barrels in.
Mhm. It's good to have a navigator that has built-in radar.
Yeah.
Well, when in the early years when we started navigating, we didn't have our radars,
Right.
and then we got some that were pieces of junk. So I mean, it had to be up here. I mean, yeah.
Well, let's give him a nice big hand.